A fleeting expression of utter pride and disdain flashed across Sue's brow, but the sharpness vanished in an instant, leaving him the same languid, frail youth. A loyal minister chooses his master to serve. Have you not come to Jinling to achieve great deeds? Princess Nihuang asked leisurely. With my waning years and sickly body, how can I speak of accomplishments? I simply wish to rest for a while. Resting in the capital? Princess Nihuang gazed into the distance, but mocked in her mouth. The plum blossom of Jiangzhou is truly unique in its choice of location. Su paid no heed to her sarcasm, responding indifferently. Does the princess take an unexpected interest in the direction of the court's affairs? Princess Nihuang abruptly turned her head, her eyes blazing with intensity as they bore into Su. Her overwhelming aura, akin to a fierce fire rolling in, would have easily toppled a lesser person. Yet Su met her gaze unflinchingly, a faint smile gracing his lips from beginning to end. After a while, Princess Nihuang finally retracted the anger she had deliberately exuded, snorted coldly, and said, "My Mu family has guarded Yunnan for generations, and we are interdependent with the court. The direction of the court's affairs greatly affects my territory, so why shouldn't I be concerned? I just think," Su bowed slightly, "that in fact, the succession of the imperial throne throughout history has always been unrelated to Yunnan. No matter who will occupy the emperor's position in the future, the Mu family guarding the southern territory of Great Liang will not be easily disturbed. Why is the princess so interested in the struggle for the heirship?" In response to this question, Princess Nihuang offered no answer. Instead, she laughed heartily, her spirit radiating brilliantly. Such an imposing demeanor, even in a woman's form, was filled with the heroic spirit and domineering air of a regional lord, utterly captivating. One could only imagine how awe-inspiring she must be on the battlefield, launching her offensive like a fierce, raging inferno. If the recently of age young lord, who had inherited his title, possessed even half of his sister's grace and aura, the royal military government of Yunnan would become the most unshakable stronghold in all of Great Liang. With a subtle movement of his brows, Su immediately understood the meaning of the southern female commander. Indeed, the Yunnan Mu military government pledged loyalty to the imperial court, but the court must also be able to subdue it. Princess Nihuang was a heroine among women, and no ordinary master could make her bow her head. What kind of person was the future emperor, and how did he seize the throne? How could she not come to see for herself? "Mr. Su," Princess Nihuang turned back after her hearty laughter, "would you be willing to do me a favor?" Su hurriedly replied, "Your Highness, if you have any instructions, I shall do my best." His Majesty has decreed that only the top 10 in the martial exam are eligible to participate in the literary exam. I would like to invite Mr. Su to serve as the examiner for the literary exam and help me determine the seating order of these suitors. At this request, Su was quite surprised, and his first reaction was to decline politely. The literary exam is personally judged by His Majesty. How could I, a mere subject, have a say in it? Who doesn't know of Mr. Su's talent and reputation? His Majesty would not object. Princess Nihuang's gaze was deep, even showing a hint of gentleness. Since everyone is advising me that a woman must eventually marry, being cautious in my selection isn't wrong, is it? Su pondered for a moment and asked, "Is the order of the literary exam used to determine the order in which Your Highness will compete with them?" "Yes, the winners of the literary exam will have the first opportunity to compete with me. If they win, the remaining 9 will have no chance. And if this person loses, the next one in line will take their place. If all 10 cannot defeat me, then I will not be married this time." Princess Nihuang's cold laughter seemed as if she had already foreseen the outcome she described. "Can you agree to this, Mr. Su?" Su understood the current situation. Even if he kept a low profile, it wouldn't make a difference. Unafraid of drawing attention, he slowly nodded and fixed his gaze upon the never-ceasing dance of blades and shadows on the platform before him. He sighed, if only there were a destined one for Princess Nihuang among them. Princess Nihuang stepped closer, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, her gaze indifferent as she watched the struggle below. As if murmuring to herself, she softly asked, "Why isn't Mr. Su participating?" "Me?" Su chuckled, "With my current physical condition, I'm afraid I'd be sent flying in the first round. If I still want to be a Kylin, not turning into a pancake would be a blessing." Hearing his description, Princess Nihuang couldn't help but laugh. "Mr. Su, you truly have a sense of humor. May I ask what illness you have?" "Merely a chronic ailment. It poses no immediate threat to my life," Su casually replied, still watching the crowd below. Unbeknownst to what caught his eye, his eyelashes quivered ever so slightly, his gaze flickering for an instant. Although this subtle tremor was like a feather touching the water's surface, leaving no trace, Princess Nihuang, being the perceptive person she was, immediately noticed and followed his line of sight. However, after observing for a while, she could not discern what had captured his attention. "Phoenix Welcoming Pavilion is not a place for me to linger. If Princess Nihuang has no further instructions, it would be best for me to go to the ornate tent below," Su spoke gently. "Moreover, if the Kylin doesn't return, won't the Crown Prince and Prince Yu be anxious?" "You're right, the sooner the better," Princess Nihuang nodded with a smile. "I won't delay you any further, Mr. Su. Please proceed." Su bowed and took a step back, performing a farewell ritual. Surprisingly, the Southern commander, who rarely paid heed to even high-ranking officials and nobles, respectfully bowed in return. After parting ways, one returned to the warm chamber while the other descended the stairs directly, with Filiu naturally following behind. From the side exit of Phoenix Welcoming Pavilion to the entrance of the ornate tent area, a long corridor connected the two. Guards were stationed outside the walls, making the entire pathway exceptionally quiet. Su walked slowly, lost in thought, until Filiu uttered an awe from behind. Su then looked up to see a robust figure approaching. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, General Meng was responsible for the safety of the palace. With the Emperor's presence, his duties were of utmost importance, requiring him to patrol vigilantly. However, he was well aware that Su had been summoned to Phoenix Welcoming Pavilion by the Grand Empress Dowager's decree. Therefore, when they encountered each other, he didn't interrogate Su but greeted him with a smile instead. Su also offered a faint smile, nodding in greeting. Both had their own matters to attend to, and their encounter seemed coincidental, with neither intending to pause for pleasantries. However, at the very instant they brushed past each other, Su's lips moved subtly, uttering a sentence with an extremely soft voice, yet carrying an unmistakably stern tone. "Listen, tell both of them to go back at once." As Su and Princess Nihuang enjoyed the view and engaged in heartfelt conversations atop the Phoenix Welcoming Pavilion, the young men in the ornate tent of the Duke of Ningguo were somewhat restless. Upon Su's return, they all gathered around him. "What did the princess say to you?" Yujin curiously asked, taking the lead. With a meaningful smile on his face, Su blinked and replied, "The princess praised me, saying I resemble a Kylin." "A Kylin?" Yujin paused. "You mean the mythical creature that looks like a mix of 4 different animals? Are you sure the princess was complimenting you?" "Nonsense," Shibi pushed him aside. "The princess was praising Brother Su for possessing the talents of a Kylin." Su glanced at the young master, saying nothing. Realizing his mistake, Shibi's face flushed red with embarrassment, knowing his words were inappropriate. However, Yujin did not pursue the matter further, instead excitedly pulling Su to recount the amusing fight that had just taken place. Even the seemingly impassive Jingrui appeared to have not heard anything, turning back to the pavilion entrance to call for an attendant to bring in hot tea. Su couldn't help but feel a touch of sentiment in his heart. These two, one carefree and guileless, the other gentle, innocent, compliant, and kind-hearted, were more perceptive than Shibi, who was caught up in political schemes and power struggles. At the very least, they knew when to pretend they hadn't heard certain things. However, the fact that Shibi was familiar with the term talents of a Kailan indicated that his position within Prince Yu's camp was certainly not low. Whether it was a crown prince or a royal prince, pursuing and recruiting a Kailan-like talent would undoubtedly provoke the emperor's jealousy and wrath if it reached his ears. Thus, apart from their trusted inner circle, they would not let others know about this secret. Even with Princess Nihuang, Su was momentarily unable to deduce how she had discovered this matter through what channels. Later, he kept dodging and dodging, and his opponent couldn't do much about it. But he forgot that he was on a high platform. As he was happily dodging, he suddenly found nothing under his feet and fell down. Ha ha ha. Yujin laughed heartily, then suddenly put on a serious face and asked angrily, "Brother Su, are you even listening to me?" "I am listening." "Isn't it funny?" "It's very funny." "But you're not laughing." "I am laughing." Jingrui stepped in and punched Yujin. Brother Su has a refined demeanor, and his laughter is elegant. Do you think everyone is like you, rolling on the ground when they laugh? Yujin was about to retort when Shibi suddenly coughed softly and whispered, "The Crown Prince and Prince Yu are heading this way." The room fell silent in an instant as Su slowly rose to his feet, calling out, "Feel you, they are guests, do not block their way." From outside, a muffled "oh" was followed by a drawn-out announcement, "His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived, His Highness Prince Yu has arrived." Entering the room one after the other, it was clear that these two were brothers, both tall and sinewy, with deep-set eyes and thin lips. Crown Prince Jingxian, at 35, bore two deep lines around his mouth and nose, exuding an air of gloominess. Meanwhile, 32-year-old Prince Yu Jinghuan appeared more relaxed, deliberately wearing a gentle smile as he entered. All present in the tent performed the national salute in unison, but of course, they were immediately helped to their feet. Jingrui and Yujin went out to play again for quite some time before returning, didn't they? This made me truly envious. Prince Yu Jinghuan, who had once been entrusted with overseeing these young nobles studying in the imperial library, had a closer relationship with those present than the crown prince. He laughed and patted Jingrui's shoulder. "I've long heard that the three of you brought distinguished guests to the capital, but I've been so entangled in trivial matters that I couldn't find the time to pay a visit." The crown prince secretly pursed his lips. "What do you mean couldn't find the time?" If it weren't for the mutual observation and restraint between the two parties, he would have rushed over as soon as Shibi reported it to him. Even so, didn't he still ask Empress Yen to bring someone the very next day? I also heard that he was let down gently by someone, and he deserved it. This, indeed, is Mr. Su, exuding an air of refined elegance, praised the Prince Yu with a beaming smile. The enduring peace and stability in the 14 provinces of Jiangnan, as well as the prosperity of its people, are all attributed to the Noble Alliance's benevolent assistance. I have long desired to report this to His Majesty and bestow commendations upon your esteemed alliance. However, I feared that your lofty aspirations and disdain for worldly acclaim would render such actions presumptuous, and thus I have hesitated to act rudely.